Move over, dead cells. Get out of here with that card shit, Slay the Spire, and remove yourself from the throne of roguelike games, Isaac. Enter the Gungeon has more guns, no cards, and most importantly, you can shoot in any fucking direction. It's not just up and down. In this video, please allow me to try and persuade you to play Gungeon if you somehow haven't yet. Thank you. To put it bluntly, Enter the Gungeon is a top-down roguelike and/or roguelite twin-stick shooter. Somehow, Enter the Gungeon does so much right that it seems DODGEROLL have created an instant classic with this game. April 5th, 2016 is now just over 7 years ago, and I ask you, fellow rogue Gungeoneer, do you have a game that you have constantly and consistently returned to, and for the span of 7+ years? And I'm not talking about a run bi-monthly or even the more shameful bi-yearly trip back to your favorite game. I'm talking a game that you will binge play just to unlock one certain thing. A game that will no doubt cripple you with carpal tunnel. And a game that has somehow overtaken drugs as my main addiction? Okay, maybe tied with drugs, but yeah. Answer. I would guess most people to say yes, because gamers all have their own comfort food style game that they play all the time just because maybe it's nostalgic to play, or it's something they play to relax, or maybe it's one of those games with an addicting gameplay loop. I hear a lot of people say that they play games like Stardew Valley and No Man's Sky, not because they're, quote, good, but rather just for something to do while trying to chill and catch up on podcasts. Regardless, I can say the reason I have been playing Gungeon since launch and continued to play it over console generations, switching from PS4 to PS5, is due to it still providing a fantastically fun challenge, and of course, the almost overwhelming amount of content they crammed into this little game. And to be honest, I know for a fact that there are still guns, items, and synergies I haven't yet encountered during my hundreds of hours of hundreds of runs, hundreds of deaths, and 7 glorious years of practice. Not to get ahead of myself, but this one's a quick recap for people late to the Gungeon party, kind of like me making this video. But, as I said before, Enter the Gungeon is a roguelike mixed with twin-stick shooter where you get to play as 4 Gungeoneer characters, each with their own default gun and items. At the start, you begin your game in the Breach, which kind of acts as a mini social hub world zone where you'll find a tempting shop, a tutorial zone, other vendors, cool, and I mean ice-cold NPCs that ignore me 90% of the time, drawing similar, pressing parallels to real life. The Breach is a fun, safe space to pick your character and invest in some new weapons. You can pick up some challenges too, which kind of work like side quests, but you do get rewarded quite well, so they are worth doing. Anyway, once you feel prepared, you can enter the Gungeon. Whenever you want. Don't pay attention to those assholes mocking you at the gates, though. Fuck those guys. The whole setup of the game, though, is that you beat all the enemies in each room until you reach a boss door. From there, you can either A, beat the boss and go to the next Gungeon chamber, or you can continue to explore and kill everything while opening chests, getting money, and even hitting the shop. All of which is beneficial and will get you a bit closer to the ultimate goal of the game, which is to find a gun that can kill your past. The Gungeoneer characters that you play as each have their own unique equipment loadout, which makes it fun to try and experiment with each person. For example, the pilot guy has a tactical hair coif which stuns enemies in disgust. He also has a lockpick. Then, the girl character, the hunter, she has a dog that follows her around, occasionally locating and retrieving gear for the player. My favorite, though, is the Doom Marine. This badass has a military past, which comes in handy in the Gungeon, sporting an extra layer of protection, no, not that kind of protection, in the way of wearing armor by default. He also has the supply drop active item, so at any point, he can re-up on ammo for whatever gun you currently have. And yes, that includes the big ammo pool guns like the Crown of Guns or the letter R gun. The other lady known as, Convict, yeah, the Convict. She's alright. She has a quick-fire revolver and a classic sawed-off shotty for her default weapons. But I can say, with 110% honesty, I only played as her for like 3 runs out of hundreds. Not my favorite character, but she's there if you want to play. So, important question. How does it play? Well, let me tell you. This game was made with Unity, and it controls way better than most any other roguelike bullet hell games I've played that do use Unity. Like, they nailed the feel of the game, and its deceptive simplicity might be one of its greatest strengths. The only main controls for your character are move, dodge roll, shoot, reload, and then the ways to access the map or use a blank. Developer DODGEROLL has said that the game was built around the dodge roll feature, and it's one of the game's best features since you will have to learn to master your timing and direction while using it to maximize its damage negating potential. Like a moron though, I still often roll into incoming fire, getting hit, but it helps more than it hinders, mostly. Shooting and reloading are self-explanatory, especially if the game's called Gungeon. You'll get access to single shot, semi-automatic, fully auto, and loads of wacky beam guns and unconventional weaponry, but more on the guns shortly. Another one of your lifelines comes in the form of blanks. These are the little blue rounds you see under your health. Upon pressing both analog sticks simultaneously, the player character will send out a little shockwave-type bomb effect, which usually stuns the enemies, giving you some time to think and or breathe. It also removes the bullets on the screen, giving you like a little breather window. But sometimes if an enemy is almost dead or just weak in general, using a blank can even kill them. In my amateur opinion, blanks are literally as important as keys or currency are in the game, because sometimes they can make or break a run, like especially if you somehow manage to get 10 of them for free from just praying to a shrine. Yeah, that was a good run. Back to the gameplay. You'll always begin in the starting elevator room and will unlock sections on the map as you enter and clear the rooms on whichever floor you're on. The order of the levels is the same every time. However, the levels themselves are procedurally generated. So, while you'll obviously come across a lot of the same looking rooms, they will at least be in a different order and have differing enemy placements, so you can't just try and memorize anything. You'll have to actually put some time in to become a quick-thinking, dynamic, attractive player that can evaluate the biggest threats within a second of entering a room. The levels in Gungeon are just fantastic, and I'm not even saying this to try and justify anything, but I don't even mind running into repeat rooms because to me, the individual rooms are just a stage for the game play. Get what I emphasize the words there? Stage play? Okay, I'll stop. But seriously, I think it might actually detract from the experience if there was a linear, handcrafted levels game with tons of static enemies and bullshit getting in the way and just doing nothing but distracting me at the worst times possible. Quick example, when I tried the game Children of Morta, the visuals, while spectacularly done, were extremely distracting and overwhelming. These kind of games benefit from the little level clutter, and Gungeon has exactly the style of level it needs for literally near infinite fun. Each level in the game, or floor, usually contains a handful of enemy rooms, a shop room, hidden rooms, a couple chest rooms, and decent few more I won't spoil. Also, of course, you can't forget the boss rooms, but I'll get to the bosses soon. What I usually try to do is clear the whole level, including the boss, and then decide how to spend my money. It seems more efficient so that you don't buy a sawed-off for 45 shells from Giuseppe, and then you get a chest that gives you a regular shotgun 2 minutes later. That shit can be so annoying, but not to even consider it a negative against the game because it rarely happens. Also, sometimes you'll get a key after killing the boss. So instead of destroying a chest to get maybe half a heart, I just wait till the level is clear to see if RNGesus will bless me with what I need. However, there is nothing wrong with just freestyling it and opening shit as it appears naturally and organically. Whatever makes the game the most fun for you is the right way of playing. And with that being said, you will find the most fun in this game when you unlock, buy, then use the many storied historic guns of the Gungeon. Hell, even the worst guns in the game are amusing and useful on some level, like the weak as shit pea shooter that you get during the tutorial. And while some guns may appear useless at first, eventually as you experience more of the game, you'll make discoveries of what certain gun strengths are. Like the Mega Douser, for example. It is a simple water gun that, surprise surprise, does shit all for damage. So, you will run into so many guns in this game. From what I've read, the number of guns in the game varies and is approximately between 190 and 200 guns. And they're all functionally different. Just let that sink in. Like 200 guns that are all unique. Anyway, they have their own feeling. It's amazing how much personality DODGEROLL was able to cram into a cluster of pixels and how each weapon feels to shoot. I am a huge fan of the guns that you can spam fire. For example, the Marine's default pistol shoots decently fast, well not fast enough to be considered spam fireable. Its hell of a, fuck of a, lot of a faster than the pilot's weak ass, inaccurate ass, stock laser gun sound effect having ass terrible laser blaster. But, sorry, back to the weapons. There's all kinds you would expect to see, and probably even more you would never even dream about seeing. You'll see various handguns, submachine guns, carbines, rifles, shotguns, explosive launchers, elemental guns, loads of video game and movie reference guns from developers with clearly a lot of good taste in pop culture, and all other kinds of wacky science-based guns, or beam guns, or guns that shoot fish out of a barrel, and much, much, much more. And to highlight just a handful of my personal favorite guns, I'd begin with one of the more traditional guns, the Luxon cannon. This thing is essentially a machine gun that shoots out crystal things at quite a high fire rate. This gun seems to do good damage on anyone from the weakest bulletkin to the mightiest boss. It has good range and accuracy, and most importantly, it makes a cool crystal sound effect. I always go for this gun when it's available. I also love the ridiculous Patriot. This is a badass assault rifle that is a reference to Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, the best Metal Gear Solid in my opinion, and in the description it even says Gun Eater to solidify that reference in case anyone missed it. And apparently that gun is based on, let me get this right, a modified XM16E1 assault rifle. So, yeah, it's a powerful assault rifle, comes with 500 rounds, and I believe the gimmick of this gun is that the longer you hold down the trigger, the faster it fires. So if you go into a tough room and just start unloading on everything, and sooner than later, they will quickly die to the absurdly fast fire rate. The gun also helps shred through most of the bosses that give you a hard time. The Patriot is also quite accurate, so it's ideal for medium to long range. If you shoot anything super close, they'd be dead before the gun even reached full impressive death-dealing potential. Moving on to a gun that's more of a bioweapon type thing because it's an actual beehive. The beehive, it quickly deploys swarms of homing attack bees that do way more damage than you'd ever expect bees to do. And the bees, they're relentless too. They'll round corners, they'll beeline straight to the enemy, and I basically only use it on bosses because with the bosses, it's usually just, well, most of the time, it's usually just one target enemy, so the bees will know who to attack, and it allows you to cheekily shoot them from behind cover, saving those sweet, sweet heart chunks. The point? Don't ignore the beehive. It's way cooler than the jar of bees item that you can eventually acquire. And like, come on, 300 homing attack bees? Need I say more? The Hex gun is a fantastic creation. Operates like the good old faithful M1 Garand, but I think it does more damage, and the magic has a chance to turn enemies into chickens, which admittedly really comes in handy with how bad I play. Also available to help you clear up rooms in the Gungeon is the Shadow Warrior Lo Wang inspired Yari launcher. I fucking love this thing. If any gun could be argued as OP, it's definitely this one. It fires homing rockets very quickly, like hold the trigger a few seconds and 1 or 2 reloads later, you've already taken out the boss due to the onslaught of homing rockets. Truly another outstanding piece of the Gungeon's arsenal. And speaking intentionally of guns that are borderline OP but unbelievably fun to use, I have to mention my particular fondness for the Dragonfire, which is a machine gun with a rate of fire fucking higher than a kite or me on any given. Like I said, I'm not the smartest man, but I do know that I could be here indefinitely if I mentioned all the guns I enjoy in Gungeon. Those were just some of my top favorites. But lastly, a few honorable mentions would be the Winchester shotgun, that is a direct pull from the best movie ever made, no argument, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. He even does the spin to reload it like Arnold in the movie. It's badass. And to nobody's surprise, probably, the prototype railgun is one of my top favorite weapons. It's even better than the Reggie railgun because it has like the bouncing effect on the fire. But anyway, it's super satisfying to use. Another sweet gun they have in the game is directly from GoldenEye N64, and it's the Golden Gun, which is pretty much a one-shot kill on everything except bosses. The fossilized gun is fantastic. It works as a flamethrower, or it works more effectively when you douse everything in the fossil fuel and then light it on fire. This is one of the only times Gungeon has ever had, like, frame drops on me. And you know, the most famous war gun of all time, the M1 Garand, is in the game, and so is its iconic ping.
Another referential gun we have here comes from Popular Disappointment, Strafe. The gun is fantastic though. In this game, it's more fun than the entirety of indie game Strafe. And I say that as somebody who bought Strafe. Also making an appearance is the Noisy Cricket from Men in Black. This time called something else, but it still works the same and it's fucking fantastic. Another iconic FPS classic is the Cerebral Bore from the Turok franchise, which basically you shoot something that drills into somebody's head and then, it bores out their brains. It's fantastic. And you can't forget the classic, the good old reliable AK-47. Just make sure you don't grab the JK-47 by mistake because it is a noodly weak piece of garbage. Also included in the game is the spinal version called the Vertebrae K-47, which that one's actually pretty good.
The guns in the game are just fantastic, and with so many of them, I can only assume people never get bored. I mean, I haven't yet, and I've put in about 550 hours. I believe it was written in ancient Gungeon text that items can be just as important as guns in the Gungeon. There are two types of items you'll find in the Gungeon, passive and active. Passive items are items that stay on or in effect in the background while you play, whereas active items are the ones that you can either consume or activate yourself from the inventory. There's all kinds of items scattered in chests and given to the player as rewards after beating a boss. Items can range from anything like a bullet belt for added ammo capacity to things as amazing as a hero pig who sacrifices himself in an honorable display of courage protecting you. It's heartwarming. Items all have their own unique purpose though, and they can make or break a run if you're not careful. Some of my favorite items in the game would be Shotgun Cola and Bionic Legs are always good. Anything that makes you faster, especially even in turbo mode. Wax Wings gives you the ability to fly, which is borderline cheating almost, since you can just hover over every pit in the Gungeon, but it's great. One of the best passive items really is the badge. When you pick up the badge, it gives you a police ride-along from Carl Winslow, which is always good, helps in boss fights. And there is really just many, many other items that the random nature of the game meant I couldn't reliably capture footage for, but just know, there's tons. And one of the undeniable best things about Gungeon that will keep you playing for days, hours, months, who am I kidding, years, are the synergies. And the synergies are what happens when one of your guns is combinable with an item you have found. You can't combine things yourself, thank the Lord for no crafting, that would ruin the game, but when you pick up two things that go together, you'll see a little synergy notification at the bottom of the screen, hinting you about what your new synergized gun or effect can now and will do. I would love to sit here and go over all the badass useful synergies, but being real, I haven't even discovered them all yet. Yeah, I know. But for an example, say you pick up the ammo belt and then find the commando rocket launcher. This synergizes and changes, allowing the gun to now shoot 8 homing rockets. Synergies like this can be game changers and have the potential to turn an absolute shit luck garbage run into a prosperous, fulfilling run in which you make it to the end. Another personal favorite is when you synergize the guitar gun and then it turns it from a Flying V guitar into like a Gibson Explorer looking guitar, and it adds a whole nother Marshall stack to basically act as a second turret for you. Other favorites include finding the Trank gun and some of Solid Snake's other famous iconic identifiable items, cigarettes, or you can even have synergies that combine 2 guns or 2 items. So, you can have fun guns and interesting items, and even synergies marrying those elements together. But none of that would be worth a resourceful rat's dick if the enemies in the game sucked. And boy, do these enemies not suck. In fact, besides a few specific enemies whose attack patterns don't compute in my monkey brain, I love all the enemies. They all have so much character and personality without ever actually saying a single word. You'll have your typical fodder enemies like Bulletkin, a handful of other unique iterations on a bullet, and of course, they even throw in some novelty enemies that can provide keys, ammo, or even health drops. Most of these fodder enemies all walk towards you slowly while shooting you in different bullet formations and with different guns. None of these guys are too challenging, and eventually taking them out will become as second nature as dancing around the incoming fire and wasting 2 guns in the gun muncher and getting a Corsair as your new garbage gun. Fuck that, I hate that gun muncher. Quick shout out to the Nitra, which is a stick of dynamite that runs towards you. If you catch him with a bullet before he gets to you, he will explode backwards, meaning with correct positioning, these low-tier enemies can provide a one-time use, big damage explosion. And it can even take out the gun nuts with one explosion. However, if he gets too close to you, he will explode forwards towards the player, but damage can be avoided if you're quick enough on the dodge. Something else you should never rest or sleep on in the Gungeon are the fantastic bosses. Each of the 5 floors concludes with a boss to defeat. There's a few mini-bosses that will show up randomly on any floor RNGesus decides, and they are just as fun as they are sometimes annoying. But the main bosses, yes, they are awesome. On the first floor, you will run into one of 3 bosses that are rotated at random. All 3 of them are fun as hell to face, with the only one ever giving me slight trouble would be our good dude, the Gatling Gull. Not normally, though, because sometimes the boss room will have slight differences. It could be added tables for cover. It could be overly generous pillars, keeping you even more covered. But the one that always seems to trip me up is when you face off in the boss room featuring 1 or 2 big room-dividing moats. Yep, the moat inside, which basically opens you up to falling in the water, aka losing precious health. Well, all you're trying to do is just dodge the Gatling Gull rounds. Anyway, the other 2 first floor bosses are always fun and don't ever give you a moat to jump over. You get the cool bullet twins who don't do anything especially concerning except fight you both simultaneously. And the other one is our good friend, the Gungeon royalty, the Bullet King. Not every floor has rotating bosses, though. I won't spoil anything, but I will just say that there is a healthy, satisfactory bunch of bosses. I have played this game since release, over 2 console generations, and honestly, I still haven't mastered the late game bosses. Embarrassing, yes I know, please roast me in the comments, but the bosses are all a huge spectacle, and you'll have to put in some time to memorize their attack patterns and learn when to dodge roll or avoid. Some of the incoming fire will be predictable and relatively easy to learn, but it's when their attacks get randomized that the difficulty really shines, at least for me. And of course, the game is tough, so if you're anything like me, you got hit as a child because you couldn't make it to the 4th or 5th floor boss on every run, so you didn't get as many opportunities to practice and learn the attack patterns. But the game had its own built-in organic solution, that being that with so many attempts to just reach the 5th floor boss, you will have enhanced your own skill level just through run repetition alone. So after tens, dozens, or even hundreds of hours of play, you'll have a firm, rock-solid grasp on the game mechanics, and subconsciously, your skills will carry you through those really intense, tough battles. And I would be a straight jackass if I didn't mention the rewards. After defeating a boss, you will be rewarded with random Gungeon-y things, including all forms of guns, items, keys, health drops, armor drops, ammo drops, and my favorite has got to be without a doubt, when you beat a boss, any main boss, without getting hit once, you will be handsomely rewarded with what the game calls a master round, which always adds another full heart to your current health pool. I'm not good enough to have gotten 5 in a run, but I've been pretty close with 4, and it's in your best interest to really try to flawless a boss. Not only does it provide trace amounts of dopamine, but if you try and buy any health flasks that provide you with extra heart slots, they are usually all super expensive at the shop, so it's much better to just get a master round. Oh yeah, and I cannot forget the shop. Giuseppe's shop is a staple of the Gungeon, and unless you accidentally aggro him, his shop will be a safe space in the lofty heights or threatening depths of the Gungeon. So yes, I have embarrassingly mentioned that I've only beat the 5th floor boss, the dragon, aka Big Papa Smurf, a handful of times, so legit, I haven't even come close to fully beating the game. That being said, it's 7 years later since release, and I'm still finding new guns in a lot of the runs. I'm still discovering new exciting synergies with guns and items that I would have previously assumed to have been garbage. This is only one of the many reasons I continue to play it all the time. Gungeon is just the pinnacle of rogue game design from where I'm standing. I mean, with the sheer variety of guns, items, traps, NPCs, Gungeon lore, hidden rooms, mysterious shrines, and way more, it's easy to see why it's fun, and why it's insane value for money, really. Point being, if you have not played Enter the Gungeon, I implore you, no, I command you with your consent, nay, I obnoxiously beg you to play this game. Everyone that I have shown or made to play it has ended up loving it. So I hope I have at least covered enough of the Gungeon's basic premise to pique somebody's interest in playing it, because I guarantee 110% I'm leaving some things out, but it's great discovering this shit for yourself while playing. So if you spent the last 7 years Gungeonless, please look past the pixel art and give the game a try for its 11 out of 10 gameplay. No other similar game's controls feel as good, and trust me, I've tried most of them in fruitless attempts to find another game that competes with it. None do. So if you know of any games similar to Gungeon, please leave them in the comments for me, or just tell me how many hours you've put into Gungeon. Have you platinumed it? I have not. What's your favorite gun or item combo? Let me know, and hopefully I will see you in the next video, which I promise won't take as long to come out. Just waiting on high-speed internet. I know that's no excuse, but that's all I got. Thank you again for watching if you made it this far. Bye.
Hey bros, what's going on? This is Cotton. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because subscribing makes you feel good.